Yo guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel, or welcome if it's your first time here. So I just thought I'd jump on today and do my weekly outlook for this coming week on Forex. So the week commencing the 20th of September. So for me this week, I'm just mainly looking at these four pairs. These are the pairs that I want to focus on just to keep my trading process simple. So I'm looking at the Euro dollar, pound dollar, AUD USD, and Nzdusd USD. Alright, so I'll just get started with my forecast now. Alright, so on Euro dollar recently, we were moving down, we were breaking structures to the low, but then we've actually had this break of structure back up to the high. So to me, that indicates that we could potentially go higher, and it's just a case of where we could go higher from. So looking at what caused this break of structure, if we follow the price back down, we've got this area down here, which had this big sell volume, and we've also got imbalance just above that candle there. So in terms of looking for a place where price could buy up from, I'd expect it to potentially buy up from somewhere down here. And we do see that there's actually another smaller imbalance there on the 4 hour. So it could potentially even make sense for price to react out of this lower area of the daily order block. So yeah, with EU on this higher time frame on the daily, I think it's possible that we'll see some type of reaction out of this order block down here, and then we could potentially see a move to break the structure to the highs. But I do think that we will probably see some reaction just because of the size of this order block. Now, whether or not we'll end up getting the full follow through to break structure to the high, or whether it's just going to be a bounce off it and then a continuation lower, I'm not really sure, but I am expecting some type of reaction from this low down here. So I like to look at it on the higher time frame and then zoom in a little bit to see what's going on the smaller time frames. Alright, so right now on the smaller time frames, on the 4H and on the 2H, it's a pretty similar story really, because the structure is not really much different. So what we can see is that we broke structure up here originally, and then we broke structure here, broke structure here, and broke structure here again. Now with this break of structure here, what we can see is that price actually came back up to revisit this order block. So we can clearly see that mitigation took place there. So that confirms that the institutions are basically engaging in this process of causing price to go lower, coming up to mitigate their orders before breaking structure again. So since we have that mitigation there, we can be pretty confident in the mitigation flow overall. So what I'm expecting here on EU is for price to potentially come back up into this area here. So what we can see is that we had our break of structure here, and then we've got another break of structure here. So thinking about what caused this break of structure, it's basically this candle up here. And on the 2H, we can see clearly that this is the last point where the institutions bought before they sold off to break structure. So what I'm expecting is potentially a pullback up into this order block here, and then a sell down. And then with that sell down, we can see whether we do get the reaction off the higher time frame order block to buy, or if it just continues through. Yeah, so for me this week on EU, I'm looking at two opportunities pretty much. I'm looking at this sell opportunity here, so I'll be watching if price does tap into this area and seeing how price reacts from it. So that's the first opportunity I'm looking at on EU. And the second opportunity I'm looking at is potentially a reaction out of this area down here to take it higher. So if we do get that reaction, I'd definitely be interested in taking a buy and potentially trying to go higher with that buy. Alright, so moving on to GU. So on GU, it's kind of a similar story with the daily. We've had two breaks of structure to the low in a row, and then following this, we got the break of structure to the high. So price has actually come back down to test the order block, which caused a break of structure to the high, and we did see a decent reaction off that order block. However, at this point, what we've really seen is that prices come up here and then started breaking structure again to the low. So if you think about the 4H high was here, and then that was the low got broken, created a new low here, which got broken again. Now the structure I've got marked on there is for 2 hour. So from a daily perspective, it is possible that price could continue up to break structure again to the high, and whether that is very valid to think that it may go up higher. But in terms of what we're actually seeing right now in the structure, personally, I'm not really seeing any attractive buying opportunities. There's no real clear order blocks for me personally to buy it off based on my strategy. So on GU, the only opportunity that I'm forecasting right now is this sell opportunity. So on the 2 hour, we have the break of structure from the high, the second break of structure, which came after a mitigation of the order block, which broke the first structure. And then we've got the second break of structure, and then another mitigation before the third break of structure. So all I'm expecting on GU right now is a continuation of this mitigation flow. So I'll be looking at selling out of this area. In terms of a target, the initial target will just be the low of this 2 hour structure, and then the stretch target could even potentially be a lower point in this order block, and then we could see a reaction higher, or we could even just see a complete violation of the order block and price will continue through it. But yeah, that's the only thing I'm forecasting right now on GU. Now, if we do see this completely violated, and then we start to see something like this, I could potentially be looking at a buy from something like that. But that's not happened yet, and the only thing that's happened so far is it's breaking structures to the low. So the only thing I'm interested on GU is this sell from this area up here, which calls the most recent break of structure. Alright, so moving on. So on AU, we had a break of structure to the low, break of structure to the low, and then we've had a break of structure to the high. So this break of structure is quite an impulsive break. It's got quite a bit more momentum than some of this bearish moves had over here. So there's definitely institutions involved in causing this. I mean, well, there's definitely institutions involved where retailers can't produce and move anything like this. Now, what we can see, and it's visible on the daily, is that there's a small imbalance here, which signals that this area is where institutions were actually active, because only institutions can cause an imbalance like that. Now, when we look at it on the 4 hour, the imbalance is actually much clearer, and it does seem quite a bit bigger. So, in terms of the fact that we've had a break to the high on the daily, we could easily just expect that price is going to come out of here and then break the high again. So for me, it makes sense that price could potentially, just come from this order block here and then start moving upwards, looking to break this daily high again and continuing to take AU even higher. Now, in terms of the lower time frame, so looking at the 2H, what we have is a downtrend basically. We've got a break of structure here. So this is the high, this is the low, break of structure. The extreme of the break of structure was there, but the origin of the actual break came from this wick here. And what we see is that price comes up to retest this wick before breaking structure again. So for me, that is the process of mitigation playing out, which shows that the institutions have mitigated some of their orders here. And then we've got another break. So what this has left behind is a clear POI candle or an order block candle with imbalance here. So there's imbalance from there to there. So on AU, what I'm going to be looking at is two opportunities. So the first opportunity I'll be looking at is a sell out of this shorter term structure, out of a 2-hour structure, to basically continue lower. And that could either be a sell to target the 2-hour low, or it could be a sell to target something within this daily order block. Or you could anticipate that the daily order block won't be respected and just continue to hold the sell through the order block. And then the second opportunity that I'll be looking for this week on AU is buys out of this area. So anticipating that potentially the market could reverse this order flow here out of this area. And what we might see is something like this. And then price just takes off. So I'll definitely be keeping an open mind to these two opportunities this week. And on AU, I'll look for a sell from the 2-hour order block. And I'll look for buy opportunities coming out of the daily order block. So that's AU for me this week. Now the final pair for me, Nzdusd. It's a pretty similar structure to what we've seen on AU. So what we've had is, most recently on the daily, we have this very impulsive break of structure. And if we actually look, where does this break of structure originate from? Well, it could seem like it's originated from here, but looking higher, what I can actually see is that there's this candle here, where there's clearly been a lot of sell volume in this wick. So in that sense, it could be seen that the institutions have basically sold so that they could generate the liquidity to buy up. And then there's also imbalance above this wick between here and here. So that indicates that the institutions were actually active from this area. Now, looking on the 4-hour, what we can see is that there's clear accumulation here with imbalance, and there's also this huge sell volume that came in this wick. So potentially this is quite a good order block to buy from. To me, anyway, it makes sense that price definitely could just continue upwards from this order block candle. So we've got our break of structure. So in the sense of the daily, what I'm expecting on NU is that potentially we could see a buy out of this area. Now there is also this lower area down here, which clearly also has imbalance, and potentially price could buy out of there, but right now I'm not too interested in that because I want to see how price reacts off this order block, which is slightly higher. So in terms of the higher time frame, I'm anticipating the potential that price could buy up from there. Now looking on the lower time frames, what we can see is basically just a downtrend going down towards this area. So we have a break structure here, and then this is the order block that caused it. There's a mitigation there, and then we've got another break of structure. Now what we get is actually no mitigation of this zone, and then another break of structure. So to me now there's basically imbalance here, and it's kind of inefficient from the institution's perspective because they're going to have orders up here which haven't been mitigated yet. So if they do want to take it further down, then there's a good chance that they're going to have to come back up here so they can close those orders. So I'm basically looking in the short time frame at two potential opportunities. So the first opportunity is a sell out of this lower point of interest or the lower order block which caused the most recent break of structure, and that's just to continue this downtrending structure. And then the second sell opportunity I'm looking at is coming from this big high volume candle up here which caused the previous break of structure, And the reason why I'm considering both is because since the last mitigation took place up here before this break of structure, I think it would make sense for price to actually come back up to this area and then continue down. But of course, the mitigation doesn't have to happen. It's just if the institutions want the mitigation to happen. So I'm also open-minded to the possibility that price will just retrace up to this most recent structural point and then continue down. Alright, so on NU, I'm forecasting 3 potential opportunities. So the first opportunity I'm forecasting is potentially a buy out of this area here. And then the other 2 opportunities that I'm forecasting for this week is sells out of this area up here, targeting down to the low, or at least down to the daily order block, or sells out of this lower area here, targeting down to the daily order block. So let's see what we get this week. Now, please remember, guys, this is just my opinion of what may happen. These are all just possibilities. So by forecasting these possibilities, I can define my potential opportunities for this week in advance. For every opportunity that I forecasted, it may or may not happen. And of course, price can simply just ignore any of these boxes that I've drawn. But for this week, these are the trades that I'll be looking at taking, and these are the only opportunities that I'm interested in. Alright guys, so thanks a lot for watching, and I will put a link to a written version of this forecast in the description. Cheers guys.